This week on Follow the Money Radio, the world's largest digital currency, Bitcoin, has defied the warnings of critics and doomsayers, rising a staggering 600% over the last 12 months. And according to today's guest, current price levels are just the warm-up.
No, I was actually the first person to come out publicly with massive figure where I laid out the case for $2.8 million per Bitcoin. You know, part of the reason for that is, we're talking about a fundamental change in technology. It's coming at a time when the world is rethinking what money is.
Also this week, we kick off a brand new segment with Christian financial advisor Mike Mitchell on how much you should be saving for retirement. And later, a brief update in response to the flood of emails we received from last week's controversial interview with former neo-Nazi Christian Picciolini. My name is Jerry Robinson. I'm a Christian economist and an investor with the heart of a teacher. So hop aboard, buckle up, because the train is departing the station. All right, friends, welcome to today's show. So grateful to have you along for the ride. You can find us online at followthemoney.com. As mentioned, my name is Jerry Robinson. Great to have you here today. We're going to be talking with Trace Meyer. He is no stranger to this program. He has, in fact, been on the program several times over the years. The first time back in 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, when he came on and actually promoted the idea of Bitcoin. Back during this time, going back, 6 years, Bitcoin was extremely cheap. In fact, this time back in 2010, if we go back 7 years from today, you'll see that the price of Bitcoin was around 7 cents. 7 cents. So you can imagine how much Bitcoin you could buy back in 2010. But that was actually the problem. It wasn't an issue of not maybe desiring to want to buy Bitcoin at 7 cents back in 2010. A, you had to know about it. And B, you had to know how to buy it. And it was not easy to buy back in 2010. In fact, it was not easy to buy back in 2011 and 2012 whenever Trace came on the program and was promoting the idea. Off the air, privately, he and I spoke after that interview, and he encouraged me to go out and purchase some Bitcoin. And I've told him over and over how thankful I am to him by urging me. And, of course, he urged you, too, you and the listening audience, to go and pick some up. So now here we are 7 years later, and we've seen Bitcoin just mushroom. It's just exploded over the years as we have seen the price of Bitcoin now up to $4,000 insiders. It was so funny. I was going through my notes before this podcast, and I noticed that back in June, I had done a pretty big update on the blockchain and on Bitcoin and Ether and Litecoin and some of these different cryptocurrencies for our members, for what we call our FTM insiders. And at that time, Bitcoin was trading for about $2,500. That was back in June. Now it's over $4,000. And one of the things we're going to talk to Trace Meyer about in this broadcast is his thoughts on where prices could be going. Interestingly enough, there have been numerous reports that we could see 6-7-figure Bitcoin in the future. So Trace is going to lay out the case for that. But before we bring him on, I just want to tell you a couple of things. It really is still the Wild West, I believe, in the whole cryptocurrency space. Cryptocurrency is really an ingenious technology, the blockchain technology that undergirds many of these cryptocurrencies. The blockchain eradicates the need for a central authority to confirm a transaction. This dream come true for the field of automation has spawned a nightmare, not only for monetary officials who are oblivious how to confront it, but let alone how to manage or regulate such a system. But it is single-handedly demolishing entire industries once deemed necessary to serve as intermediaries. And so one of the things we're seeing is the financial space, the healthcare space, the insurance industry, even governments now being disrupted by blockchain technology. And when I look out at the blockchain technology today and I see the cryptocurrencies, we own about 9 of them. We recently told our members which ones we own. We own Bitcoin, of course. We own some Bitcoin Cash, which is the new forked version of Bitcoin, the one that kind of split off recently with the segregated witness. But also, we own Litecoin, which is kind of the silver to Bitcoin's gold, if you will. We also own Ethereum, Ether. We're not going to get into all those today with Trace. We're really just going to focus on Bitcoin today. But if you're really interested in many of these other cryptocurrencies, there's lots of great resources that we'll have in today's show notes for you to check out. But it really is, as I mentioned, a wild west. It reminds me so much, in fact, of prior times. When I look back and think about Wall Street in particular, I think back as I do research, and I've spent a lot of time studying Wall Street speculators of old, many living around the turn of the century, the 1890s, the 1900s, the 1910s. I mean, this was an era of unsophisticated market mechanisms prone to sudden flash crashes that some savvy traders learned to trade for their own benefit. But there was a lot of people back in the 1890s, 1900s, 1910s who said, look, prudent people should stay away from the stock market because it'll ruin you. People had bad stories, about how the stock market was just rife with corruption. And they were right. It was. The stock market was rife with corruption at the turn of the last century. But regulations eventually stepped in and made it a safer place for retail investors like you and me to step in and start buying stocks. So that's where we are, I believe, with cryptocurrencies now. There was a ton of money made at the turn of the last century in Wall Street as speculators began to buy stocks. And I think that those of you who are out there listening, I'm not suggesting that you should throw all of your money into cryptocurrencies by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's the last thing that I would ever suggest. In fact, with our 5 levels of financial freedom, we strongly, strongly urge you to build an asset, several asset classes into your overall plan. So personally, before I bring Trace on, I just want to say this. I personally have 5% of my overall investable assets in cryptocurrencies. And that's all, right? That's all. I'm not betting the house. I'm not using rent money to buy cryptocurrencies. But I am taking 5% of my investable assets, which I could use for real estate, I could use for stocks, I could use, for gold and silver. But I say, you know what? I'm going to take 5% and I'm going to buy some of these cryptocurrencies. And that's what I've been doing since 2012. And the payday, of course, has been immense. No doubt about it. One of the cryptocurrencies we own, in fact, is called Ripple, XRP. I've been a long time early adopter of Ripple. And that one's up 4,000% this year. I mean, so we're talking massive gains that are happening. Will they continue? Well, that answer comes in our upcoming interview with Trace Meyer.
You follow the money. Just follow the money.
All right, well, joining us on the line today is an old friend of the show. He's been on the program several times. In fact, touting Bitcoin back in 2011, 2012, right here on this podcast, Follow the Money Radio. It's our good friend Trace Meyer. Trace, great to have you on the program today.
Oh, great to be here and be here again. Always kind of been a fan of you and your show, so let's get to it.
Likewise. I sure do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. You were, by all means, an innovator and an early adopter in Bitcoin, so your vantage point is very valuable here. We have so many new people coming into the space now who are giving us their prognostications about what might happen. We're much more interested in guys like you who have been here from the very beginning, who you get the technology, you understand what's going on. When you look at the price of Bitcoin today, Trace, at 40 or 4,000, 4,100, whatever it is right this moment, does that price scare you, or do you think that we are still far from the eventual price that this thing could go to?
Yeah, so not very much scares me, to be honest. But I've been through all these roller coasters. No, I was actually the first person to come out publicly with a massive figure, and it was in a December of 2013 interview where I laid out the case for $2.8 million per Bitcoin. So Like $4,000, like that's not cool. I mean, even $40,000, which is what the Winklevoss twins have talked about. I mean, that's not cool either. You know what's cool? Like $4 million. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is, I mean, we're talking about a fundamental change in technology. It's coming at a time when the world is rethinking what money is. It's coming when we've had huge advancements in information technologies and communications technologies in terms of internet protocols. And Bitcoin is a protocol that's what it is. And so, I mean, it's a triple entry bookkeeping innovation. We had double entry bookkeeping in the 1300s that laid the foundation for the Industrial Revolution. We're laying the foundation for the information age revolution. So, I mean, $4,000 Bitcoin, I mean, that's nothing compared to where this thing could go. And at really what people have to do is they have to invest in themselves. And one of the key ways, just like you, is that you invest in yourself is you learn how to use the latest tools. And you learn how to use tools and technology, because that's how you can be more productive. You can dig a lot bigger hole if you have a bulldozer than if you have a shovel, right? And so, like, Bitcoin is a tool. And so, whether people want to buy Bitcoin or not, I think everybody should learn how to use it. Just like you know how to use email, just like you know how to use credit cards and bank accounts, just how you know how to use the internet, like all of these things it's just a tool that you have to learn how to use. And once you've learned how to use it, that's when you can, decide whether you want to, buy more of it or speculate with it or things like that. Because the last thing you want to do is think that you're going to speculate in this thing and not have done your homework. I got a friend, I went to law school with his wife, and we're hanging out, and I'm telling him about Bitcoin, and we go down and buy like 100 with the Bitcoin, and he's using blockchain.info, which is a very popular web wallet. And a year or two later, I get a message on Skype, and he's like, my $1.5 million of Bitcoin is gone. Like, what do you think happened? And, somehow it got compromised, mainly, I think, on the blockchain.info server side. Anyways, that Bitcoin would be worth over $10 million today.
Oh my gosh.
And what did the poet say? Of all the words of tongue and pen, the saddest of all are what might have been.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend has since, he's taken personal responsibility, and he's actually bought more Bitcoin, and he's the most paranoid Bitcoin user that I know in terms of securing it. I thought I had a massive tinfoil sombrero, right? But I mean, he's got just as he's super paranoid. But losing money focuses the mind in a certain type of way. But at the end of the day, when he had $100 of Bitcoin, he was putting $100 of thought into securing it. And when he had $1.5 million of Bitcoin, he was still only putting $100 of thought into securing it. And so, you don't just start. Like, you have to learn how to do all these things gradually. And if you never put in the homework, then luck. A lot of people say that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so if you haven't done the homework, if you haven't figured out how to use the technology, if you haven't figured out how to secure the private keys, or like what network consensus is, or like all these things, then you haven't done the preparation, so you miss the opportunity. And it's unfortunate, it's what might have been. It's
back
not fun.
Back in 2011, 2012, when you and I sat down and we talked about this, certainly, and of course we've had you on since then, but that's when we first started hammering on this topic of Bitcoin. I was an early convert because of you, so I give you credit for that because you turned me on to it. But as we look now in 2017, these analogies that you've been using, like email and some of the other things that you've recently said just on this call, they're starting to make sense now. It seems as if in 2017, the price has punched through levels that's finally getting people's attention. And so now people are beginning to say, hey, how do I get a hold of this? Now, Fidelity is making it very simple for their users at their online brokerage to then team up with Coinbase and actually buy. So we're starting to see some new, fresh demand where perhaps we wouldn't have had some in the past. As we look forward, and we have individuals who are saying, look, I missed the train, but I see Bitcoin, I see crypto to get started, I want to learn. What do you recommend to that person? You know, you helped out your friend, you helped out me. What would you say to somebody out there who says, hey, I'm trying to get started too, and it's 2017, I'm late to the game? What's the next step for them?
So I'd give two steps. One is, go to one of the Bitcoin websites that helps you start. A really good one is weusecoins.com. It'll kind of help walk you through, at least getting started. And then I interview all the top people in Bitcoin on my podcast, CEOs of all their companies, and I try to really focus on what they're working on, what they're building. Go listen to the archive of all these interviews. I've done like 150 of them or something like that. And there's just a huge wealth of knowledge there that you can learn all types of like things. You can get up to speed really fast because you aren't having to break all this new ground. So that's really what I'd kind of recommend for people if they're getting started. And fortunately, they're able to consume all this information in English, right? We're going to be bringing online tons of people that don't speak English. I mean, they're already coming online right now, but just today, Dr. Adam Back, CEO of Blockstream, made the announcement that Blockstream has now rolled out the Bitcoin satellites. And so 2/3 of the planet is now covered with able to receive the Bitcoin blockchain. This means that it doesn't matter how much money they have because it's all free for people to use. It doesn't matter if there's government censorship because you no longer need an ISP, because previously if you wanted to run a full node, you needed about 10 gigabytes of bandwidth every month. Now you get it all free from these satellites, and they're going to have the entire world covered by the end of the year. That means that if you're selling goats in Africa where there's no internet service, you can download the full Bitcoin blockchain for free from a satellite. And then also, because segregated witness, which is a huge upgrade to the Bitcoin protocol, Bitcoin in 2011 is not the same as Bitcoin in 2017. They are two totally different animals. And this segregated witness upgrade will enable us to bring something online called the Lightning Network. And this Lightning Network is going to enable us to scale up to 500 million daily users, easy, in a trustless way. And with this satellite, if you're selling goats in Africa and you have a local IT guy with $100 satellite, you can bring the entire full node Bitcoin infrastructure to your village without any ISP or internet connectivity. You can open up a Lightning Network and everybody's able to do transactions for free and save in a currency that's limited in amount. And one of the biggest things to lift people out of poverty, especially extreme poverty, is property rights. And Bitcoin is a whole new form of property rights, and in terms of software and code and all of this stuff. And so that, like, this is coming online. Like, it's live right now. This satellite is covering 66% of the world. And then if you actually do need to settle a Bitcoin transaction to the blockchain, you can use an upload of like a text message or something, and it costs 1 penny in order to settle these Bitcoin transactions. So in other words, the cost of accessing the Bitcoin network have just been drastically reduced. And what we find is it's not necessarily the best protocols that win. It's the protocols with the greatest and deepest network effects. That's why we still use email. Email's got a lot of problems, but SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, it's entrenched, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, and it's because it's the entrenched protocol. And so Bitcoin is becoming and is by far the most entrenched money protocol on the internet. And so, I mean, this is incredibly exciting. And all of these give reasons to just own and hold Bitcoin, because like it's a bet on the productive future of humanity. Because people are going to use internet protocols for money, just like they use it to transfer emails and transfer blog posts and YouTube videos and all this stuff. Like, we're going to use it to transfer money too.
Fascinating and exciting discussion here. You're listening to the voice of Trace Meyer. He runs the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast. Before we close out, Trace, tell our folks how they can learn more about you and your podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is available at www.bitcoin.kn, and I send out tweets every now and then, just at Trace Mayer. Kind of have some fun with that. Twitter, following the example of our president, Twitter is just such an incredibly entertaining thing. And so yeah, there we go.
All right, my friend. Hey, I tell you what, again, I want to tell everybody listening that you turned me on to this back in 2011, 2012, and I am eternally grateful for that. Hopefully today we've turned on a few more people who will see the light and understand that this technology is not going away. It's a real thing. The technology is matchless in many ways, and people need to figure out how they're going to participate, not if they should. Thank you so much, Trace. I sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry, and I'd completely echo that. And nothing makes me happier than seeing a bunch of people that are able to take control of their monetary sovereignty so that they can do good with it. Because, so much of our resources have been conscripted into things we don't agree with our current monetary system. And this is a way that we can fight back against that and do what we want to do with our resources as humanity.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Trace Mayer. He always gets on to me. It's actually Trace Mayer. I should say that properly, but I've been calling him Meyer for so long that I guess he doesn't mind anymore. But anyway, Trace has a lot of good things to say about Bitcoin, so I do encourage you to go check out his podcast for sure. Hey, you know what? I am so excited about the next segment. This is a very brief segment we're going to be displaying or having on our podcast now. It's called Sound Retirement. And it's hosted by Mike Mitchell. He's a personal friend of mine. He's also one of our top members of our Christian financial advisor team that we have. We've actually been referring people to Mike for quite a long time. He is someone who has been in the business of financial advising for 40 years, has a lot of experience. He uses a very powerful economic model. In fact, the same model that I used to use whenever I was a financial advisor back in the day. And so, of course, I don't do financial advising anymore personally, but I do refer people to guys like Mike. And Mike Mitchell, again, has been in the business for about 40 years. He focuses specifically on helping people achieve a comfortable retirement. I think that's so powerful today. People are so worried about running out of money. So let's go ahead and move into this brand new segment that's going to be a regular segment on our podcast, the Sound Retirement segment with Mike Mitchell.
Welcome, everybody. This is Mike Mitchell with Strategic Wealth Partners. I have a real important question I would like to ask you today. When it comes to your retirement, how much do you really need to save? Most planning experts would say that if you're retiring today, you should have at least 80% of your pre-retirement salary available to you to maintain your lifestyle and support you during retirement. And that's probably a good number. However, depending on your specific situation and some of the variables that may impact your life and your retirement, that number could be higher or lower. So let's look at a couple of those issues. The first one is, how soon are you going to retire? Some people would like to retire as soon as possible. However, more and more baby boomers today are finding themselves needing to retire at later ages. Obviously, the sooner you retire, the more money you're going to need to be able to maintain your retirement lifestyle during the years that you are retired. Another issue to consider is life expectancy. How long will you live during retirement? Now, because of medical advances, a lot of people are finding themselves faced with the possibility of being in retirement 20, 25, 30 years or more. One of the greatest fears that people have today regarding retirement is outliving their money. We would like to help you come up with the right answers. And to that end, I would like to invite you to call us toll-free at 866-533-2055 and let us help you find out what are the proper answers for your sound retirement. Once again, that's 866-533-2055. This is Mike Mitchell saying goodbye for now, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Well, in this week's trading tip for all of you traders out there, I want to talk about the need to avoid low-volume stocks. Low-volume stocks, very, very important if you're a new trader or you've been trading for a while. This is so key. Personally, I've been trading for about 20 years. I prefer to trade stocks with at least 400,000 shares in average daily volume. Now, if the stock price is less than $5, then I raise my minimum volume requirement to 1 million shares. However, remember that the level of a stock's volume, trading volume, provides us with an instant look at the current level of interest in that particular stock. So when a stock trades on low daily average volume, it's a sign that there is less interest in that issue than another stock with larger amounts of volume. Now, while it's true that stocks with low volume carry a greater potential for sudden, sharp, and large moves, these moves are much more difficult to identify in advance compared to stocks that trade on higher volume. Additionally, stocks that trade on low volume are often more difficult to sell or liquidate than their high volume counterparts. So if, for example, a trader earns a nice profit on a low volume stock and decides to sell the stock, it can take many minutes, hours, and maybe even days to sell, all depending on the amount of volume that the stock trades on. So by the time the order is actually finally completed, the price could be higher or lower than the trader had initially expected. So do yourself a favor and up the odds of your success by focusing your trading efforts on stocks that are more liquid with good and consistent amounts of daily volume. Again, I like to trade stocks with at least 400,000 shares of average daily volume. Well, we received a whole lot of email from our listeners from last week's interesting interview, and I would say controversial interview, with Christian Picciolini. Christian is a former neo-Nazi, former white supremacist, and he has since changed his tune, kind of seen the light, and has now actually formed with other people, founded a group called Life After Hate, that seeks to reach out to those who are trapped in a life of white supremacy. This is a topic that is very sensitive, and it's obvious based upon not just the emails we received, but upon the vast amount of fighting that we see today, not just on social media, but also in the mainstream press as we look and we see all of the war of words, people trying to cast blame upon other people for this. Friends, I believe that race in America is a very, very dark thing. We have a very dark history here in the United States with racism. And what I was surprised by, and I guess I probably shouldn't be surprised by it, but I was surprised by the emails we received. Sure, we received some great emails from people saying, hey, that was an interesting interview. Thank you for doing that. We always get those kinds of emails. But what I was surprised at this week was the amount of emails we received from people saying that that person should not even have airtime, that person should not be able to speak out, that he shouldn't have a voice because perhaps for whatever reason. I mean, there were all kinds of interesting emails that we received. And it made me realize when I was reading some of these emails that because the hostility level is so high and because I value you as a listener to this podcast, I want to share with you in conclusion a little bit about more about me and my spiritual background. I think most of you know that I was born and raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It was something that I was born into. I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness. In fact, at the age of 17, after Jehovah's Witnesses had really failed me morally, I was not receiving any kind of moral support from Jehovah's Witnesses. It was a very tough thing to be in a false cult. And over the years, by the time I turned 17, I found myself mired in drug use, mired in alcohol use and partying all the time. It was at 17 years old. And I didn't want that kind of lifestyle, but I was lost. And I wasn't getting the kind of spiritual satisfaction that I needed from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe you can identify with that. Maybe some of you listening to me today maybe you have a background that's different from where you are today. Maybe you come from something else, and I can identify with that. It's very, very important that we all respect that in other people. Well, I was born again at 17 back in the early 1990s. That's kind of telling my age. And at that time, whenever I began to go to church in the evangelical world, I quickly discovered that if I wanted to fit in with the evangelical world, I had to lean towards the Republican view of the world, the Republican view of America. And I did. In fact, I was a very staunch promoter. Now that I look back, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'll share with you, I was a staunch promoter of the Iraq War, the lead up to the Iraq War. Now, once the Iraq War started, I started doing more research and understood the petrodollar system, but I didn't understand it beforehand. So after September 11th, 2001, when those towers came crashing down, that was a game changer for me. That literally launched me into ministry. But when I launched into ministry, I did so with a Republican mindset because I thought that was the acceptable or the right way to be a minister. And so I defended the Iraq War because I thought that was the right thing to do as a Christian, okay? And over time, I have been able to untangle, and maybe it's because I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and so I can see through things. Maybe it's because I've been deceived before, and I know what it feels like to have the wool pulled over my eyes. Whenever I began to fully understand the petrodollar system, when I fully began to understand how economics works and how this whole world is kind of put together, it was then, and only then, that I was able to understand that the two-party system here in America was actually kind of a bad joke. And it was then that I began to research and study to see how the Republican Party in particular had reached into the world of the evangelicals and had really used them and abused them for their support. And I found this to be repelling to me, okay, as a Christian. I decided that, listen, I want to follow the words of Jesus. I don't want to follow the words of Ronald Reagan, okay? I want to follow the words of Jesus. And so as I pressed more into my Bible, I discovered that the kingdom that I serve is not of this world. It's not of this world. And so therefore, over time, I have been able to untangle much of the mess that I found myself in, even after I was born again. Many of the political philosophies that hold our minds today, I believe that they are not necessarily biblical. Now listen, I know that if you're listening to this right now and you say, Jerry, I'm not a Christian, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm not talking to you, okay? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those who are I'm asking for you, if you're not a Christian, to understand where I'm coming from and to respect that. That's all I'm saying. But if you are a Christian out there listening to me today, what I'm suggesting to you is that it is possible for you to not be a Republican or a Democrat, that it is not an either or, that it's not Coke or Pepsi and that's all. I'm actually challenging you as a Christian to realize that you can live higher than that you do not have to settle for those two parties and those two parties alone. It is actually possible not to have to be part of either one of those. Now, one of the things that we have, and one of the comments I saw regularly in the emails we received was, why don't you trash liberals on your show? And I think that's a really interesting question. And I think I should answer that question by letting you know that the vast majority of our audience are people who are Bible believers. And if you go look at the average news sites that Christians in America look at, you're going to see plenty of bashing of the liberal media and of the liberal agenda and of liberals in general. So I kind of assume that many people in our audience who are Christian believers, that they get an eyeful, an earful of how bad the liberal agenda is. Okay, so I'm not going to add more to that. I would assume that you can see through much of that. But what I think many people who are Christians are not able to see through is the BS on the right side of the aisle. They can't see through it for some reason. They attach their Christianity to their political philosophies, and they get tangled up in a big mess. So what I'm suggesting to you is that for those of you who are Christians out there, and you've heard me talk before, and you're not sure, is he a Republican, or is he a Democrat, or is he a liberal? Please hear me, that I'm neither. And I really mean that. I'm not either one. I used to be a strong Republican, but I've never been a liberal, and I'm never plan on being a liberal. What I am is a Bible believer. Now, you may be listening to this, some of you who are Christians, and say, how is that possible? I'm glad you asked. Because this weekend, on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, I'm going to be hosting a 3-week series on this very topic. Now, if you're not into the Bible and you don't want any Bible teaching, you don't want to know about this kind of stuff, you don't have to be there. It's completely free. But if you want to be a part of this live teaching where I'm going to be talking about the things I'm talking about right now, but I'm going to go deeper, and I'm going to open up the Bible, and I'm going to talk about several things. I'm going to try to help you, set you free in your mind to where you are not hostage to political philosophies, but in fact, you can actually free yourself from those, or probably more accurately to say, to be freed from them. If you want to be a part of that live teaching, I encourage you to go to ftmdaily.com/Bible series. That's ftmdaily.com/Bible series. There you'll be prompted to enter your name and your email, and when you do and hit submit, you're going to receive an invitation. And that invitation is going to allow you to come into that live teaching on Sunday morning and be a part of it. If you are not able to attend the live teaching, but you still want to hear it, don't worry, because we'll record it. And so just sign up for the teaching at ftmdaily.com/Bible series, and we'll send the link to you whenever it's done, so you can watch it at your own leisure. So very, very important that if you want to be a part of that, be sure to sign up at ftmdaily.com/Bible series. I hope that clears some things up for you. Friend, I believe the Bible. I believe in Christ. But I don't promote political agendas. And I sure hope that's clear today. And if not, I'll keep saying it over and over until that finally gets through to some of you. But feel free always to reach out to us. If you have any questions on what I've said or anything that you've heard on the show today, reach out to us. You can email us at info@followthemoney.com. We'll be happy to take your questions and comments right there. We appreciate you being a part of our podcast. Grateful to have you here. God bless you, and we'll see you right here next time. Until then, take care.
information contained on the Follow the Money podcast is strictly for informational and educational purposes. It should not be construed as specific investment advice. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of ftmdaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry Robinson does hold an insurance license and at times may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Follow-up, individualized responses to email or phone requests that involve the rendering of personalized investment advice for compensation will not be made absent compliance with state investment advisor registration requirements or an applicable exemption or exclusion and applicable insurance regulations. Past performance is not indicative of future results. You should be aware of the real risk of loss in following any strategy or investment discussed on the podcast. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before making any financial decisions.